All right, this is the second part of the representative town meeting of Darien. This is the state of the town, and these are presentations by the leadership of the town of Darien. And first up is First Selectman Monica McNally. Monica?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, RTM members, fellow colleagues, and viewers watching at home. Thank you, Channel 79. On behalf of my fellow selectmen, Sarah Newman, and our new teammates, Michael Burke, Marcy Minnick, and John Zagrodzky, we're looking forward to working with you in 2022. I'd like to thank David Martin for his service on the Board of Selectmen while wishing him the best in his new role on the Board of Finance. I want to thank Kip Coons for his 6 years of service on the Board of Selectmen and his continuing service on the Oxbridge Building Committee. I would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to Jamie Stevenson, our former First Selectman. Her dedication and loyalty to the town has been an inspiration to me and to many others. I would like to take a moment to recognize 2 Darien volunteers who passed away earlier this year. Fellow RTM members, Joan Davis was a member of the RTM for 34 years and very active, with other town organizations, and Mike Heitz, who also served on the RTM and volunteered with many other town organizations. Their service to our town exemplifies all that is good about Darien and highlights the importance of volunteer involvement that keeps our community moving forward. The Board of Selectmen is looking forward to working with all of our town colleagues in 2022 on policies, projects, and a budget that will ensure that Darien remains one of the best communities in which to live, work, and play. The board will post our 2022-23 goals and objectives on the website when completed. Tonight is my first State of the Town address as your first selectman, and I am happy to report we are fiscally strong, back to work, our businesses, schools, and homes are safe, and the town is growing with new faces strengthening our community. Congratulations on Blue Wave's win over New Canaan in the state semifinal, and good luck in the finals on Saturday. I am grateful for the strong community support during the election. The election turnout of 48%, the highest in over 30 years, is an indication of strong community engagement. Essential in engagement is respect, empathy, and the willingness to take responsibility for our words and actions. As parents and educators, we work hard to instill these values in our children, and as residents of our town, we should strive to model these qualities in all of our interactions. John Zagrodzky served skillfully for the last 13 years on the Board of Finance, 6 as chairman, and tonight we welcome Jim Palin as the new chair. I'm looking forward to hearing from Duke Deneen on the many positive developments happening in our school, including an update on Oxbridge and a summary of the building committee for the 3 elementary schools to be renovated. We are all seeing the exciting developments happening in downtown Darien and in Norotan Heights, which Steve Mulvaney will be covering. Thoughtful consideration has been given to the impacts on traffic and pedestrian access and safety, 2 areas the town will continue to be focused on during the construction phase. Planning and zoning will also be working on the state-mandated 5-year affordable housing plan to be submitted in June. 2021 presented Darien with some serious challenges. Every town department, like every business and every family, was impacted one way or another with COVID. Our health department, led by David Knopf, has remained vigilant and is dedicated to protecting our residents, ever mindful of developing variants. School officials, Dr. Adley and Alicia Casucci, town officials, and senior advocates have worked closely around restrictions. I thank those countless volunteers that have assisted in vaccination clinics. Your help has been immeasurable and greatly appreciated and is unfortunately still needed. Our booster clinics are in high demand, so please reach out if you're available. We need vaccinators and volunteers. The Department of Public Works, led by Ed Gentile, and our Emergency Management Department, run by Mark McEwen, have been extraordinarily busy managing weather-related shocks to Darien that occurred this summer. Storm Elsa, a tropical cyclone, hit our community hard on July 9th. A local state of emergency was declared after we received over 6 inches of rain in 6 hours. Our sanitary sewer system was inundated with groundwater, rainwater, and with heavy flows from illegal downspout and sump pump connections, which exacerbated the flooding issues. This underscores the critical importance of the work the town has been doing to improve our sanitary sewer system. In addition to improving the sanitary sewer system, the Public Works Department flood impact action items include drainage studies for Saltbox Lane, Bailey Avenue, and Grove Street areas, repair work on Gorham's Pond Dam, and multiple bridge inspections. Tropical Storm Ida hit Darien on September 1st and 2nd with over 9 inches of rainfall in over 8 hours and was declared a federal disaster on October 30th. This declaration enabled Darien to utilize federal resources and allows homeowners and businesses to apply for aid. The Small Business Association, SBA, has set up a help center at the Darien Library until December 29th, which is also the deadline to apply for low-interest loans. These loans are available for businesses, nonprofit organizations, homeowners, and renters. FEMA and the Disaster Recovery Center have been in person in Darien to assist residents in securing aid. The Disaster Recovery Center is working out of the Norotan Heights Fire Department now and plans to be there for residents until December 15th. Thank you to the library and Norotan Heights Fire Department for sharing their facilities. Earlier tonight, the RTM approved funding for assistance to residents in completion and submission of applications for hazard mitigation grant applications. Please watch for updates on the town site regarding this. The Board of Selectmen will continue to prioritize opportunities to help mitigate flooding problems for residents and businesses with solutions that will not have a negative impact on others downstream. There have been many recent initiatives on the state level that have the potential to impact Darien. The recently passed $1 trillion federal transportation bill will send over $6 billion, that's about $1,700 per resident in Connecticut. Needed transportation and transit infrastructure projects will hopefully be addressed in 2022. The recent 10-year census report indicates Darien's population grew by 4% since 2010 to a total of 21,499 residents. For those that are curious about COVID's impact, the U.S. Postal Service shows Darien's rate of growth doubling between 2019 and 2020, going from a 3% growth to a 6% growth. And statistics for 2021, I'm sure, will continue more of the same of that. The redrawing of political boundaries to account for population changes reflected in the 2020 census will split Darien into 3 Senate districts instead of the 2 we have currently. We will be represented by Senators Will Haskell, Bob Duff, and Senator Patricia Billy Miller. My board will continue to monitor state legislative issues and initiatives that may impact Darien, and I will continue to be actively involved in the Connecticut Council of Municipalities and the Western Council of Governments, working to keep the needs of Darien in the forefront of regional discussions. The Board of Selectmen will begin 2022 focusing on 2 important initiatives. The American Rescue Plan Act Committee will focus on the negative impact of COVID and recommend an action plan to the Board of Selectmen. Regulations on how to spend the $6.4 million allocated to Darien continue to evolve, and the town has until the end of 2026 to spend these funds. In response to the information technology assessment of the town's IT infrastructure, the Board of Selectmen established an IT governance and advisory committee, which is just beginning its work. Members will be asked to vet, approve, prioritize, and monitor technology programs, and policies for the town. This year marked the 20th remembrance of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Monuments and Ceremonies hosted our annual ceremony at the Middlesex School, and our sister city, Darien, Illinois, held a ceremony in memory of the 6 Darien, Connecticut residents who lost their lives. Our parks have been utilized more than ever before. Residents raised $45,000 to convert a tennis court at Cherry Lawn into 4 paddle courts. Paddleball court revenue went from approximately $60,000 to $105,000. There is interest in revisiting the pear tree improvement project and in conducting a statistically valid townwide survey to best assess what the majority of residents envisioned for the site while considering the local impacts. Again this year, our first responders have been on the front lines battling COVID, fire, storms, and floods. The Darien Police Department, the Norotan Heights Fire Department, the Norotan Fire Department, and Post 53 continue to provide the utmost in professional and volunteer services, and we appreciate all they do. The police department continues its efforts to mitigate the ongoing incidents of unlocked motor vehicle burglaries. They have partnered with Stamford, Norwalk, and Greenwich Police Departments to staff the Lower Fairfield County Motor Vehicle Task Force, utilizing grant funding. Please lock your cars. Public safety is our #1 concern in town, and it's also the #1 priority for the police. We've just begun the Think Smart Before You Start campaign, and we are hoping it will encourage drivers to be more aware of pedestrians and cyclists. Let's work to eliminate accidents by being more focused and less distracted while using our roads. The Department of Public Works continues to work on projects that have great impact on our daily lives. This year, approximately 6 miles of roadway were paved and almost 1 mile of sidewalk was replaced. Upgrades to the Seagate pump station were made, and over 8 miles of camera inspection work on the town's sanitary sewer main were completed. Painting of crosswalks was unfortunately delayed due to supply chain events, but we are looking forward to spring when that will resume. An intersection improvement project at Norotan Avenue and West Avenue has been in the works for years, and I'm pleased to announce that the bidding process has begun. This project is funded by a $1.2 million LOTSIT grant. We continue to monitor electric, water, and gas company initiatives to ensure that they are in accordance with town's goals and objectives and standards. Beth Paris, the director of Mather Senior Center, has worked with her staff to adjust the services they provide to changing COVID restrictions. Technology workshops are planned that will help seniors improve their computer skills. Lunches provided by this center have proved to be very popular, with over 3,000 served since July. The Human Services Department serves as a safety net for those in need. It provided grocery gift cards to 40 seniors and 49 families for Thanksgiving, and the staff is now working on Adopt a Family Senior Holiday Gift Giving Program. If you are interested in supporting this program, please contact the Department of Human Services. Krista McNamara was elected as our town clerk in the November elections, which were managed in a professional manner by our register of voters, town clerk staff, and poll volunteers. A quick review of land records shows that department has been very busy. The number of deeds processed rose over 24%. Town conveyance fees increased by 76% to $2.7 million, and births in the third quarter rose 38% to 175 over that same period in 2020. The town was awarded a steep grant in the amount of $92,000 for landscaping at Highland Farm, and the planting of native trees and shrubs has begun. If you have not yet had the opportunity to take a walk there, I encourage you to do so. The Advisory Committee on Sustainability has applied for a grant to help increase the food scrap collection program, which will decrease our solid waste costs. Thank you to everyone on this committee, and especially to Craig Flaherty, who has been stepping down after serving for 7 years as chair. The Thriving Youth Task Force completed a youth asset survey. The study focused on 2 areas, substance abuse and mental health. A key takeaway of the study found parents who are good about communicating roles and expected behaviors significantly impact students' decisions to refrain from using substances. The town will work with the American Jewish Committee of Westchester and Fairfield to continue our commitment to combating expressions of intolerance. In 2022, diversity, equity, and inclusion training for department heads and supervisors will be provided. While I believe we have extremely professional staff working in each department, the training is an opportunity to look at situations with a new awareness and understanding. It's great to see community events begin again in person. The 41st Darien Road Race, organized by the Community Fund of Darien, was run on September 19th. An old-fashioned holiday put on by the Darien Parks and Recreation took place at Tilly Pond on November 28th, followed by the annual Darien Sports Shop tree lighting. Menorahs were lit at Tilly Pond at the Darien Sports Shop and nightly during Hanukkah at the Grove Street Plaza. The ever-popular July 4th Push and Pull Parade took place, and over 4,000 people gathered for fireworks at the high school. Thank you to the sponsors, the staff, and the volunteers, and the police for helping us with all of these events. In 2020, the Bicentennial Committee, led by Al Miller, took us on a journey of Darien's history. Thank you to the committee, the volunteers, and the community sponsors for honoring Darien's forefathers and our unique heritage. The Darien Foundation funded a new vehicle for handicapped passengers for At Home in Darien. They also provided a $213,000 grant by funding for 12 new robotics clubs to build on STEM education in Darien schools. And speaking of generous, who won this year's Most Generous Town competition, Darien or New Canaan? Officially, the title goes to New Canaan, but in reality, it was the charities. New Canaan raised $270,000, and Darien raised $226,000. Charitable giving is a priority in our town, and I think we all come out winners on this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and thank you to all of the volunteers, the various community organizations, and all of the members of our commissions and boards that donate time, expertise, and resources to our beautiful town. You are the backbone of Darien. In closing, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to the hardworking staff in the Selectman's office who have helped immensely during this transition period. Kate Bush, Linda O'Leary, Karen Dunn, and Lori Dunn are a joy to see every day. So thank you, and I wish you and your family a healthy and joyous holiday season.
Thank you, Monica. As you all can see, members of the RTM, it's a little quiet in here without you all here. We've got to work together to figure out a way to come and meet here together. It's much more fun that way. The next talk is from the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Steve Alvani. Steve?
I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, my fellow elected officials, the people of Darien. Good evening, everyone. I am Stephen Alvani, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, And some people kid, including me, that the Planning and Zoning Commission serves as the real estate department of Darien. It was a pleasure to follow Monica's speech this year. I think you did a fantastic job. Congratulations. I was recently re-elected to the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commissions. I'm excited to deliver my report again this year. One of the reasons I ran for re-election is that I want to see all the proposed projects in the pipeline that you hear about, that you will hear, and there are quite a few coming, and there are some physical and some legislative. First off, thank yous. In my speech last year, I started by thanking the many volunteers who staff our 4 local land use boards. Again, I will take the opportunity to formally thank the members who have retired and welcome new members that have either been appointed or elected. Of note, the P&Z members Jennifer Leahy and Larry Warble and First Selectman Jamie Stevenson have since retired. Of course, as you know, the Selectman is an ex officio member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so now we welcome Monica McNally to the commission. We also had the retirement of longtime zoning enforcement officer and assistant director Dave Keating after working at Darien for 38+ years within the department. Thank you for all your hard work. Have no fear, everybody, we still have Jeremy. Groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings. As I mentioned to you over the past few years, change is on the horizon. Well, I'm glad to say that 2021 has been the year of groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings, and that will continue into 2022 and 2023. Let's first start with more detail, and I'm ready to go. I got my hat and my vest whenever you want to invite me to a groundbreaking or ribbon cutting. I must say that I'm very proud of all the projects that we have approved, and I hope that you are too. The first redevelopment is the Darian Playhouse. The back of the building where the theater was removed. The project consists of 3 commercial spaces on the ground floor in the back of the building and 4 upstairs apartments. The final tenants will be moving in over the next few months. We also want to figure out how to connect the new walking paths and sidewalks at that building from the new bridal shop that's at the former Brooks Brothers all the way down to the Darien Sports Shop. The replacement building, the old haunted house that was at 34 Old Kings Highway South, is almost complete, and it will become a nice new modern to our downtown with a brand new rooftop terrace. It will be occupied by Baywater properties so that they can overlook and watch the construction of the Corbin district from their rooftop. The former Darien International Tile Building at the corner of Dickinson Road and the Post Road at 1897 Post Road at the top of Rings End Road is near completion as a mixed-use project. There will be commercial retail tenants on the first floor and 5 apartments on the upper floors, with one of those being in affordable units for a 20% affordable ratio. Thank you to the Vacaros. The first floor tenants has been identified and could be ready for move-in in the beginning of 2022. The next is the Corbin project. Baywater Properties is in the process of construction, what I'll call Phase 1A. The 3 replacement buildings on the east side of Corbin Drive. The expected completion of these 3 buildings is in late 22 or early 2023. That's the big hole in the ground we have in the middle of our downtown. Then Phase 2 will start, which is the west side of Corbin Drive. The Planning and Zoning Commission has long made improving downtown a priority. We have seen some great results, and we've come a long way in the past 20 years since I have been in town. Next up, we have the federal project in the Roten Heights called Darien Commons. It's moving along very rapidly, and Phase 1, the new Walgreens, opened in April. We can expect the commercial tenants and the upstairs residential uses to be occupied in the fall of 2022 before school starts, Duke. Got that? Okay. They're starting to do pre-leasing of the apartments in the first quarter of 2022. The entire project should be completed in 2023. Some new commercial tenants have been announced, including an Italian restaurant, a coffee shop, and an ice cream shop, as well as a membership-based nail studio that specializes in gel for my daughter, Caitlin. I actually have to run soon to go pick her up at the airport. The project will bring some life back to that block, and we will have and there'll be a few other commercial tenants announced soon, but I expect that we will hear a lot more of that and new exciting tenants next year. Next up, while the redevelopment of Norotan Heights Shopping Center has not yet begun in earnest, the commission is in the process of reviewing some changes to the approved plans for a potential first-floor tenant. One part of the application is of the new application is a private daycare preschool with 10 classrooms. Since it's a pending application, I won't elaborate too much more, but all the records and plans and files are on the new Darien OpenGov platform for transparency, for all to look at. The new Oxridge Elementary School is also coming along well, very nicely. It will be a new 109,000 square foot state-of-the-art school with 21 classrooms designed for 428 students and about 80 faculty and staff. Congrats go out to the building committee and all their professional consultants and the construction teams. I look forward to going to that ribbon cutting and the final project, and the Board of Education Chairman, Mr. Deneen, may provide more details about the ribbon cutting and the opening. P.S. Slam is also doing, who designed that one, is also doing all the stuff in Stanford right now. There are a few other projects that will also be getting underway in 2022. The first change is to the BMW of Darien property, which will include a new standalone private car wash building and alterations to the existing showroom, and creating a new, more state-of-the-art efficient service center in the back. This is a multi-year project, and it will take a little time for the whole thing to be finished. Finally, in the past year, we have lost a longtime staple in town, the Pear Tree Point School. The school was demolished last year in 2021, and in 2022, we will make way for new single-family houses on the 4 newly created lots that are there. I'm a real estate guy, and I've been in the commercial real estate valuation analysis business for over 30 years. So I can say that the result of all this redevelopment is an inconvenience in the short term. Yes, it's noisy, it's loud, it's rough to look at. However, thinking long-term, suburban renewal and these redevelopment projects will have a significant positive impact on the town and further increase the overall grand list of Darien, which has the ability to lower our mill rate. As you all know, most communities do not get the opportunity that we now have in terms of growing our grand list. I am sure that in a few years we'll all see these final projects and it will all be worth it. I think now we have the 7th lowest mill rate in the state of Connecticut. We're slightly lower than New Canaan, but we're a little bit higher than Greenwich. Year in review. One big change in 2021 was the implementation of new land use permitting software in Town Hall. This has have numerous advantages for both staff and the general public. This is the OpenGov program. Duke, OpenGov? Many other communities use this program both in Connecticut and around New England. I also use it up in Rhode Island in my house in Narragansett. I will quickly summarize some of the benefits. First, this allows the public to review information online. It also allows credit card payments. From an efficiency standpoint, it allows for concurrent reviews of multiple departments, since there's no longer hard copy plans that typically get passed around. Now they are electronic plans that can be accessed by all at the same time. This also allows the submittal of application on nights and weekends after hours without the need to come to Town Hall. Certainly a greater convenience for both builders and property owners. So far, the online software program has been a big success, and we look forward to continued funding efficiencies and convenience for all in the future. As I predicted in my speech last year, there was significant zoning and land use regulation legislation coming down from Hartford. The first of these you are all aware of which was the imposition of one standard multifamily parking statewide. The commission did respond by reducing its parking requirements for multifamily properties in the regulations, but not to the standard required by the state. I was extremely pleased that in October 2021, both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the RTM unanimously voted to opt out of the state requirements. Thank you to the RTM for your 81-0 vote and approval and support of our regulation that we developed. The year ahead. While we have finished responding to the state mandates with Public Act 21-29 relative to multifamily parking, the Planning and Zoning Commission will have to spend portions of 2022 dealing with other state-adopted laws by the legislature last year. The first of these is to figure out how we'd like to address marijuana dispensaries. The commission will take this up in the first quarter of 2022. Other such communities have also, including Greenwich and New Canaan, are not allowing them. Westport also disallowed them too, I found out that later today. Other communities such as, and I'm sure that my commission members want to hear from the police commission prior to making any final decisions on this matter. At the same time, the commission will be starting another statewide required project, an affordable housing plan, as Monica alluded to. The staff will be working on pulling information together, and we will start our work on that in the first quarter of 2022. A third state mandate, as part of the recent regulation, was regarding accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. The commission will decide how to address those issues in the state zoning regulations, or whether we decide to opt out of that requirement and write our own regulation with local control. I expect we'll get started on that work in the second half of 2022, and we may be back to the RTM if the Planning and Zoning Commission determines that it'll be appropriate to opt out of the state requirements and use our own requirement. On top of all this, rumor has it that there are more zoning-related changes being pushed in Hartford, and that may require further changes to the way we do business as a commission and possibly our regulations and zoning. We will continue work with our legislative contingent in Hartford to better understand what specific issues are in play and how any changes will affect us here locally. As I said in my speech last year, we've been monitoring this, and will be priority for us to start the new year to stay on top of those potential changes and understand the implications to Darien. So, as you can see, this has been a year of groundbreaking and ribbon cuttings, and the Planning and Zoning Commission has been very active in 2021, with much work already on our plate for 2022 and into 2023. Over the next year, the town will start to see highly visible projects start to take shape, and more is on the horizon. There are many more accomplishment initiatives that we can talk about, time permitting, such as flooding and associated mitigation plans. But as you can see and hear, the state of the town of Darien, the Darien Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Darien real estate market are all doing great. So in conclusion, I would like to wish you all the best in 2022, and I look forward to updating you again a year from now. Now I'm off to the airport to go pick up my daughter. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. The next speaker is the Chair of the Board of Education, Duke Deneen. Duke?
Good evening, everyone. Good luck on that trip to LaGuardia, Steve. Get back safely. Good evening, Mr. Moderator, First Selectman McNally, Chairman Mulvaney, Chairman Palin, and Superintendent Adley is in the audience here this evening, too. Hello to all our elected officials and members of the community, both here and those watching on Channel 79. And thank you, Channel 79, for all that you do for the town and for all our committees. I am Duke Deneen, Chair of the Darien Board of Ed. On behalf of my colleagues from the Board of Education, it is my pleasure to update you on the work for the children, families, and taxpayers of Darien. As I've stated many times throughout this school year, schools exist for children. It is a privilege to stand before you this evening as Chair of the Board of Education. I would like to publicly take this opportunity to recognize the combined 13 years of dedicated leadership and service provided by Deb Ritchie and Katie Stein on the Board of Education. Simultaneously, we extend a warm welcome to two new members of the board, Tara Worm and Julie Best, and welcome back Dave Brown. After an extensive and rigorous search process, the district also welcomed 3 new principals this year: Mrs. Carolyn Rodriguez at Middlesex, Mrs. Carrie Snowden at Hinley, and Mr. Ryan Betts at Tokenique. We also welcomed over 50 new staff members and also welcomed our 2 teachers for our Teacher in Residence program. This past year was another unprecedented school year as the district successfully navigated the ongoing challenges of the COVID-19 health pandemic. Navigating this ongoing health crisis continues to be a collaborative effort with students, staff, parents, and town government agencies. We are particularly proud that we have been able to keep our children in school throughout the pandemic and that we continue to provide live instruction to students who need to be quarantined, and that we implemented a recent Screen and Stay program which allows more students to stay in school while symptoms are monitored by the parents. I continue to get comments from around the state as I participate in other chair meetings and calls on how we executed with our technology and dedicated teachers, students, and parents in keeping our kids in school over the last almost 2 years. We are constantly applauded for what we've done here in Darien, and we are used as an example of what can be done working together and collaboratively as a town. We express our appreciation to the administration, teachers, support staff, and nurses for all their efforts to provide our students with an exceptional education and for the support they provide to our children every day in a pandemic, while at the same time caring for their own families. Parents, staff, and students have risen to the pandemic's challenge through practicing recommended health and safety mitigation practices that are reviewed weekly by the district's medical team. We extend a special word of appreciation to Elisa Casucci, Director of Nursing, COVID-19 Compliant Liaison, along with all our school nurses, Mr. David Knopf, the Town Health Director, and Dr. Timothy Kenefek, School District Medical Advisor. We couldn't have done it without all of you working together as a partnership. These individuals have worked tirelessly on behalf of the school system and the Darien community. Their efforts, dedication, and guidance have been instrumental in maintaining the health and safety of our students, staff, the Darien community, and in helping to keep our schools open. As of December 1st, the district had 37 active COVID-19 cases with a cumulative total of 443 persons quarantined. As school, town, county, and state cases rise, decisions on school learning models will be reviewed on a regular basis in consultation with our medical advisors, the latest information from the CDC, the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and always with the health of our students and staff as a priority. We are still under an executive order and a mask mandate, and that will continue through February. Keeping our schools open has required expenditures for mitigation strategies and improvements to health and safety practices. At the end of the last school year, COVID spending was $3.5 million, inclusive of grants and funding from the town. Strategic planning. Under the guidance of the superintendent of schools, the board completed its process of strategic planning to identify the next level of work for the district. The work was overseen by a strategic planning committee consisting of 27 members representing students, staff, parents, community members, and members of the Board of Education. We thank all those involved for devoting their time and talents to this important project. The board reviewed and adopted the plan as its blueprint to guide the board and the district's work over the next 5 years and beyond. The strategic plan prioritizes the importance of meeting needs of all learners. The board looks forward to executing on the strategic plan and looks forward to working with the community and our students as the plan evolves. The strategic plan also includes the development and recent approval of the vision of the graduate at the high school, and that is the foundation for the high school's NESAC decennial accreditation in 2024, which has already started. As part of the strategic plan and in response to issues of racism, prejudice, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and discrimination, the board and the administration are committed to collaborating with the community in addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are important issues for the town, the school district, and most all, our children. We are ensuring a welcoming school for all students as we prepare for our young people for life after high school. Currently, we have 4,637 children enrolled K through 12 in the Darien schools, with another 90 children in our ELP program. Our most recent enrollment study by the independent firm of Malone and McBroom, projected out to 2021-2031, notes stability over the next decade with a reduction of about 76 students. The district remains a highly desirable school system known for its academic excellence. Our current average cost per pupil for fiscal year 21 is $22,838, which is slightly more than the last 2 years, but is still in the median range with our comparable district reference group. When we last met, the RTM approved the 2021-2022 budget. Some of the work directly supported by your votes and ongoing support and investment include, but are not limited to, maintaining reasonable class sizes. This is critical to the local neighborhood feel that we value, especially with our elementary schools. Providing one-to-one access to technologies for students in grades K through 2, 5, and 9th grade. This has proved critical, our investment in technology throughout the pandemic. Upgrading school security with additional cameras, emergency lighting, and the adoption of a new emergency lockdown system. The implementation of the SES assistant principals at the elementary schools to support special education and general education programs. The continued focus on social emotional learning and the implementation of the Ruler program from the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. Improving network and wireless infrastructure for student learning, and improving facilities throughout the district. We are participating in the Minority Teacher in Residence program. There are new STEM classes at the high school. We have the continued implementation of the responsive classroom model. And with the assistance of our wonderful PTOs, we provided in-person end-of-year celebrations for the 5th and 8th grade moving up ceremonies, a high school prom and graduation, as well as retaining for year 2 the new drive-through tradition for students and families. I would also shout out a thank you to all the organizations, PTOs, CDSP, CPAC, and countless volunteers who are part of our district and make the district work every day for our students. In addition to town funds, as mentioned earlier by First Selectman McNally, a generous $213,000 2-year grant is funding a K-12 robotics program consisting of after-school robotics clubs at all of the schools. The taxpayers in Darien receive a tremendous return on investment when comparing student academic achievement and per pupil expenditures as compared to other Connecticut districts. Students' performance across standardized testing continues to be exceptional. 445 students took 943 AP tests, with 89% of the tests receiving a score of 3 or higher. We had 2 National Merit Scholars, 5 finalists, 21 Commended Scholars, and 7 Presidential Scholar candidates. The continued recognition of the district for its academic excellence, as reported by U.S. News and World Report, which named Darien High School #1 public high school in Connecticut 2020, and Newsweek named Darien High School one of the 100 best STEM high schools in the nation. The production of musical and arts performances, chorus, band, orchestra, and theater. I had the opportunity last week to go up to the high school to see the chorus and the tutors perform. The music, the sound was incredible, all done with social distancing and with masks, but the performance, the music, the singing was just incredible. The recognition of the district as the best community for music education in 2021. The ongoing Middlesex Quiz Bowl team continued to experience accolades and championships, and the continued success of our athletes and sports teams, FCAC and SEAC, with 10 divisional championships, 5 FCAC championships, and 4 state championships. Go Blue Wave. Looking forward to the new year and the next level of work. In the new year, we will work with the Board of Finance, RTM, Education Committee, RTM Finance and Budget, and Town Hall. We will negotiate a new teacher's contract that respects the hard and talented work of our teachers while recognizing the current economic climate. Teachers matter, and the skills and dedication of our talented teachers has been particularly necessary, noticeable, and impressive during the pandemic. We cannot do it without you, teachers. Thank you. The value of our human capital cannot be underestimated, particularly during these times as it is increasingly more difficult to attract staff. I was at a meeting last week with Dr. Adley, a legislative breakfast, and it was one of the top topics. How do we recruit, how do we retain, and how do we bring more teachers into the state? It's critical that we continue to attract and retain talented teachers, staff, and administrators. We look forward to continuing this conversation with the Board of Finance and the RTM. Students are always our top priority, and we make decisions in the best interest of all children and their educational needs. At Friday's last legislative breakfast, Dr. Adley and I, along with many Fairfield County districts, implored our state representatives to advocate for appropriate funding for education and removing the cap on the excess cost grant for special education services. Additional topics discussed included the support for the Open Choice program in the regional, additional support for Teacher in Residence program, relief from state mandates such as new curriculum and graduation requirements, and support for the mental health and social emotional needs of our students. It was a great breakfast in that there was an incredible amount of consistency and thought in what the superintendents and board chairs were delivering to the legislators, and it was consistent in terms of what all the districts were looking for. The work on the new Oxridge Elementary School is well underway. This exciting project was planned and expertly managed by an amazing building committee overseen by Kip Coons. The academic wing of this $63 million project is scheduled to open in the fall of 2022, with full opening of the new building in the fall of 2023. This is a phased project with the academic wing being done first. This new construction will provide generations of Darien children with a state-of-the-art educational environment. We thank the Board of Selectmen, RTM, and Darien community for their support of the new Oxridge Elementary School. We are on schedule and under budget. It is currently all framed in and all covered, so work can continue on the inside during the winter months. The board has also completed the planning and educational specifications for, yes, the removal of portables across the district, with consideration also being given to the educational needs of the elementary libraries. The building committee is being formed, and we look forward to the committee commencing its work shortly. Budget season is upon us, and the board looks forward to collaborating with all town officials and bodies in bringing forward a creative and financially responsive budget to the community. Innovative programming and budgeting allows the district to protect the investment the community has already made to education and allows for some necessary improvements. Our exemplary school system directly benefits our taxpayers by maintaining property values and making Darien a very desirable town for families and a desirable place for teachers to work. Darien's commitment to providing an educational experience characterized by excellence is reflected in the community's support of town budgets. It is critical during these uncertain times that the town continues to protect its educational programs and investments. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, I thank you for this opportunity to address the town. I wish you a healthy, safe, and happy holiday season, and I look forward to further discussions in the new year. Congratulations to our Blue Wave football team, and go Blue Wave on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Duke. Our next presenter is the Chair of the Board of Finance, Jim Palin. Jim, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's Jim Palin. I'm the newly elected chairman of the Darien Board of Finance. I'd like to first start off and just correct one thing that my fellow colleague, who's the chair of the Board of Ed, just said, is that the actual Darien is going to play for the state championship on Saturday, not Sunday. So everyone make sure that you buy tickets and get ready to get out there and hopefully bring home a championship on Saturday. I'd like to start my speech by sort of recognizing and thanking my fellow board members. That includes my vice chair, Dan Baumgartner, Rob Cardone, Paul Hendrickson, and Taylor Carter, all of which were returning from last year, and our newly elected members, David Martin, who transitioned over from the Board of Selectmen, and John Wolcott, who just joined our board this year. I'd also like to make a special thank you to Jen Charnowski, who's our Director of Finance and effectively CFO on the town side, who puts in countless hours during the day and night to help us through all the different projects and financial analyses and budgets and appropriations that we go through on a weekly and monthly basis. And lastly, I'd like to recognize John Zagrodsky, who was chair of the Board of Finance prior to me and served many years on the board, and recently stepped down to join the Board of Selectmen, and also Frank Huck, who served many years on the Board of Finance, many as the vice chair. Both of these guys were good friends, colleagues, and sad to see them go and happy to see John move on. So page one, I'd like to start off by recognizing the fact that Darien is a financially healthy, regionally competitive, and prepared for both the known and unknowns that the world may throw at us. Starting off on if you look at our AAA rating from Moody's, we have the highest possible rating from Moody's and positioning Darien very well to access the capital markets to fund our various capital projects that we have moving forward. These include some of the projects that Duke Deneen mentioned, the new school at Oxford, of which we'll be bonding the final $20 million in the coming months, and approximately $75 million, which will soon be in front of the RTM to take the portables out of many of our different elementary schools and expand those schools as well as other improvements. Having this AAA rating and having the sort of unfettered access to the capital markets at extremely low cost funding, among the lowest cost of any other municipality in the state of Connecticut, is very important because it allows us to access the capital markets and amortize these costs over many years and spread them out over the taxpayers. One of the second reasons that makes Darien very financially healthy is our $26 million unassigned fund balance, which is approximately $7 million greater than the minimum threshold which the Board of Finance has set as its policy. This unencumbered fund balance is what allows us to deal with the unknowns that pop up. That includes additional spending that we saw during fiscal 2021 related to COVID from both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed. It relates to unanticipated capital projects that we saw pop up during the past 2 years. Having this cash on hand and having additional amounts above the minimum that we would need to sort of maintain our rating and so forth allows us to be nimble and fund both of the two operating units of our town, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed. Talking more about our debt, we have more than ample debt capacity to move us forward with the known and unknown capital investments we need to make. Currently, we have about $62 million of debt, and as I mentioned, we expect to borrow another $20+ million to finish out the funding for the new Oxford Elementary School. We've structured that debt and slightly restructured it over the past few years to make sure that the principal and interest amortization and so forth are set in place in a way that allow us to keep adding additional capital projects without increasing our debt service and by spreading them over the next 10, 20, or 30 years. I would also add that Darien's mill rate, which for fiscal year 2022 was 16.84, is among the very lowest out of all 169 towns in the state of Connecticut. This is in part driven by, I think, what is a very strict financial stewardship here among all the operating divisions of town, but also I think driven by a very healthy and improving grand list that we have here in town. And lastly, on the grand list, I would say we've seen a significant demand for real estate here, as Darien continues to be one of the top destinations for families looking to move out of the city and for a more suburban experience with access to the greater New York metro area. The question is, Darien's in great shape, so how do we keep it that way? If we look at the pace of expenditures from the general fund over the past few years, we've seen that the pace of increase is trending lower, but COVID has added some variability. Both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed during 2021 had a number of unanticipated expenses, some of which they were able to fund inside of their own budgets. Others, you may have seen, they've had to come back to the Board of Finance and ultimately the RTM to get additional appropriations for. But generally speaking, you can see the 10-year compounded annual growth rate of expenditures, not taxes, has been 2.9%, over 5-year 1.7%, and over the past year, which there are a lot of unknowns related to COVID, we saw a 2% increase in our general fund expenditures. Some of the considerations and things driving this are obviously COVID, the amount of federal aid, which on the Board of Ed side, we received significant federal aid that offset a lot of those COVID expenses. We've had, as you've seen over the past few years, a number of small and medium-sized off-cycle capital investments that we've needed to make. Obviously, our union contracts, the wages and benefits of all of our town and schools employees are one of the largest expenditures. And certainly within those contracts, things such as healthcare benefits have become, a bit unpredictable. And obviously in some years, we've seen significant growth in those. The student population, which I'll get to in a little bit, we've seen a little bit of a decline over the past 6 or 7 years, but a little bit of an uptick there. And then looking at other new projects and overall grand list, which Chairman Mulvaney talked about, some of the larger projects which we're seeing come into play in the Corbin District and in Enrollment Heights, all of which will add to the grand list and allow us to amortize our expenditures over a larger base. Digging a little bit deeper into the expenditures here at the town, this graphic here shows that the Board of Ed's net expenditures have continued to drive the general overall increases that we've seen in the town-wide expenses. I mentioned net expenditures because these expenditures are net of the revenues and state grants such as ECR and so forth that the Board of Ed receives directly. The compounded growth rate over the last 5 years has been 2.6%. On the right side of the page, you can see here that the town was slightly below that 2.3, and it's a little bit of an uptick from the last few years. If you look at how our operating expenditures, absent debt service and capital investments, our operating expenditures generally break out 25% for town services and 75% for education services. A few observations here. We've seen that the Board of Ed expenses have been growing slightly faster than overall town expenditures over the last 5 years. But as far as a percentage of overall expenses, ignoring capital, they've been relatively consistent at 75-25. A little bit further in terms of what we've seen driving some of the Board of Ed expenditures. On the top, we have a graphic here that shows what's happened to student enrollment. Since 2015, we've seen a decline in enrollment of about 350 students. But as many of you would expect, with the influx we've seen of new residents, some moving to Florida and others moving in from other areas because of our great schools, great services, and low taxes, we've seen a little bit of an uptick of students there. And these are all absent the ELP population. On the bottom side of this graphic, what we're showing is what's happening to the per student expenditures. And we've seen over the past 10 years, that's grown at a compounded annual growth rate of approximately 2.6%, moving from just under $15,000 per student to $22,700 per student projected in the 2022 budget. Discussing our indebtedness a little bit more, this top graphic gives you an idea of what our outstanding debt has looked like over the past 10 years. You can see in 2011, 2012, after some of our larger projects here at Town Hall, on the heels of new high school, on the heels of a new police station, our debt peaked at just below $100 million, and last year ended up at $62.2 million, but is projected to increase to $82 million in 2022, and that's as a result of approximately $20 million more of debt we anticipate to issue in the January, February, March timeframe. Looking at how we repay that debt, the bottom graphic here shows the breakout between principal and interest. It has been relatively steady over the past 7 or 8 years, with the exemption of 2020, which we see a little bit of a peak, and that was a result of our board deciding to use excess funds on hand to prepay some very high coupon debt that came due in the following year in fiscal 2021, which is why you see a little bit of a decline in that year. In terms of planning for some of the larger capital expenditures, such as Oxridge and the 3 elementary schools, Hindley, Holmes, and Royal, as I mentioned, the board's done a little bit of work in terms of how we actually structure our debt service. In order to get over what we referred to as a sort of near-term hump in debt service, what we did with many of our recent debt services were debt issuances were issue 20-year debt where we don't pay principal in the first 2 years and then have level debt service thereafter. That's allowed us to continue to fund more projects, and it will going forward as we look to finish out the Oxridge School and the elementary schools without a material increase day one in our debt service, and really capitalizing on the fact that over the past 10 years, the town has been very aggressive in paying down debt. Takeaway from this page here is we have very reasonable debt levels. Well, depending on the timing of the elementary schools, if they are approved, it may well take us above $100 million mark, which has been the highest level that we've had in the past. But the important thing is to look at our overall debt service and what that equates to as a percentage of our $150 million budget. And we think we can hold that steady at or around the $10 million or less number. So we're in good shape to fund these projects. In terms of liquidity here on page 7, I referred to, we have approximately $26 million of unassigned fund balance. That's cash on hand that has not already been appropriated for certain capital projects or into one of our annual budgets. That amount has grown from $16 million in 2015, and we ended fiscal year 2021 with a $26 million unrestricted fund balance. Generally, the Board of Finance has a guideline by which they want to make sure that the fund balance never dips below 12% of our overall budgeted expenses. Currently, and we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next page, we're about $7.9 million above our minimum, which is where we think we need to, the very minimum we need to have in order to stay in the best graces of the rating agencies and to be able to deal with unexpected expenses and our appropriations that come before our board, such as some of the capital improvements we saw at the Board of Ed. We had a $1.7 million appropriation there. The RTM, I believe, just approved $110,000 tonight to support the applications for some of our residents' FEMA grants. But this 7.9 is what we look to help deal with the unexpected. And certainly if there's one thing that we've been taught in the past couple of years, it's the unexpected can actually come true and happen. What I would also mention is, although we're $7.9 million above our minimum target, in fiscal 2021, we actually allocated approximately $4.6 million of our general fund, of the overages, to be dedicated towards some of our capital projects. And so while you would have expected when we dedicated that much out of the general fund to see that dollar amount come down, because of the way we budgeted, there was a surplus in 2021, which ended up coming back into the general fund. Switching to page 8 here for an overview of what fiscal year 2021 looked like. The overall budget, I should say adjusted budget, was $152.4 million. That was planned to be funded $138 by taxes, $8.8 by other revenues, which include everything from beach passes to building permits, a small amount of state grants that we get, which are just under $500,000, and that contribution from existing cash on hand to pay for capital projects and other unexpected appropriations. In reality, if you look at what happened, we budgeted conservatively around the collection rate, not knowing what was going to happen to our residents and their ability to pay taxes in the face of a March, April, and May 2020 where the market was all over the place and it was extremely unpredictable time. In reality, we ended up collecting 90 basis points more than the taxes we actually originally assumed. So that positive result on the revenue there was really a result of our board planning conservatively for tax collections. Other revenues, the majority of that $1.1 million increase above and beyond what we originally expected at the budget was due to real estate type transactions and town clerk revenue. That was up 12% over what we expected. State grants, which included some COVID-related grants and reshuffling of other grants, were up about $300,000. Small number, but big percentage. And lastly, the contribution from fund balance, the $4.6 million, we ended up not having to take that money out of fund balance to ultimately support the budget. And the reason we didn't need to is, as I mentioned, we collected $2.6 million in higher revenues between taxes, other revenues, and state grants. And as you move to the bottom of the page here, you can see that the town, although its adjusted budget went up by 1.3, it ultimately returned a $1.3 million surplus at the end of the year. And on the Board of Ed side, although its adjusted budget, after adding the subtractions and additions related to COVID, the adjusted budget was up by 1.4, but they ended up returning approximately 1.4 of a surplus at the end of the year. A lot of that was due to the school receiving a number of different state and federal grants related to the CARES Act and other programs. So all in all, we collected $2.6 million more than expected in 2021. We spent 2.6 less than the adjusted budgets expected, which allowed us on the bottom of the page here to return an additional $700,000 to the general fund, which in crafting the scheme of the 2022 budget, we again used that $700,000 plus other funds that were in the general fund to help offset the tax increase in the fiscal 22 budget. Page 9, moving on to long-term budget guidance as we enter the new budget season here. Similar to what my predecessor presented last year, we look at budget growth in three different categories. One is the growth of the core budget, and that includes existing personnel and contracts that we have with our employee partners, current services that we're delivering, and then the constant efficiencies that we're all looking for among delivering those services. That core growth of the budget, we look at long-term to be in the 2.5% category, given what we see happening in healthcare expenses and union wages throughout the state. When we look at new growth, and these include additional headcount, they include additional capital investments and benefit changes and other things within the sort of employee contracts. We think these are things that, provided the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen and department heads are making clear and compelling cases for, that the total aggregate budget guidance would be 3% over the long term. On any given year, due to the facts and circumstances, that can be higher or lower, and as we've seen over the last couple of years, the actual budget growth has been in the 2% range. Lastly, in the far right-hand side is the unknown and the unexpected, and we certainly had a lot of that over the last 18 to 24 months. In dealing with and funding these expenses, we encourage the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed to first work within and manage within their existing budgets, to make sure that if they do have additional and extra expenses, to track separately, which both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen did a fabulous job of these past 2 years. And to avoid permanent solutions and permanent headcount for situations or problems that may be sort of short-term in nature. And then lastly, I would remind both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed that special appropriations do work. The Board of Finance maintains $26 million unassigned general fund balance, approximately $7 million above its targeted need. When these boards have unexpected expenses, whether they be interim capital projects or unexpected operating expenses, they should come back to our board, keep us informed, keep the public informed, keep the RTM informed. And hopefully we've shown that our board, as well as the RTM, can move quickly on these special appropriations. Overall, this long-term budget guidance, the effect on our taxes will be mitigated by what we believe to be continued growth of the grand list, much of which my predecessor, Steve Mulvaney, spoke about some of the large commercial projects that are taking place in town. And certainly when you look at the number of real estate transactions that we've seen over the last couple of years, that we do expect the grand list to continue to show healthy growth. For closing thoughts, I wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming budget process, which is already underway on both the Selectmen's side and the Board of Ed side. We have a number of new leaders on many of our new boards, and we welcome working with all constituents, both the existing board members and new board members. We welcome new views and new ideas. They are good, and they cause us to kind of think out of the box and rethink things that we've been doing year after year. Ultimately, success in budgeting comes from collaboration, transparency, inclusion, and civility among everyone that's involved, all the different boards. And I, for one, will say I have an incredible working relationship, I think, with all of the board chairs and board members and many of our department heads, all of which are a true asset to this town. As it relates to new initiatives, whether they be on the Board of Ed or the Board of Selectmen side, my recommendation is that we need to make sure that we're measuring and evaluating the value of all these new initiatives, and that we're also going back and measuring and evaluating the effectiveness of existing programs. We should constantly be thinking about the cost-benefit analysis of new programs and old ones that we have in place. As it relates to the capital projects, we have Oxbridge well underway, which is in excess of $66 million. We have a $75 million estimation of what it could be to remove the portables from the 3 elementary schools and build out other parts of those schools. So with over $140 million of capital investments that are either underway or planned, we should consider new projects very carefully, just given the amount that we currently have on our desk. And in terms of guidance that I went through on the prior page, I would say guidance is guidance, and it's designed to keep our town fiscally healthy, regionally competitive, and to deliver both value and efficiency to our residents over the long term. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Jim, thank you. This concludes the State of the Town meeting for the representative town meeting and for the people of the town of Darien. The role that the representative town meeting plays in all of this is important. The collaboration that has been mentioned is key to keeping everything rolling. In a sense, the RTM is the grease which keeps the wheels turning. Any money spent in this town is approved by this body, and any laws which pertain to how this town operates are passed by this body. So your continuing involvement, continuing collaboration is very important to how this town keeps it standing and keeps on moving. So I pass that on to you tonight and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.